Welcome to Truth Bombs and Tea. This week we are talking about the 7 signs of a healthy relationship. And I think that's what we all want. So, healthy relationships are relationships that make us feel obviously happy, that it has meaning, and that it's got longevity. So, it's got that real depth and quality to it. So it turns out that there's been a lot of research done on what makes a long lasting healthy relationship. And I'm going to share those 7 with you in this week's episode. Exciting stuff. So if you're new here, welcome. I'm Tina Bindon. I'm the founder of Truth Bombs and Tea. And we're all about living the rest of our life as the best of our life. And we're looking at the core things that make a great life so that we can actually live one, which makes sense. So I talk a lot about emotional intelligence, mental health, mindset. And I also have a look at physical and spiritual concepts as well, because I like to follow the 4 rooms philosophy or the house philosophy that the Japanese philosophy follows. And that talks about how your body is like a temple or a house, and that the 4 rooms within it, the mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual, need to be regularly gone into and cleaned and tidied and maintained in order to have a great life. So that's what Truth Bombs and Tea is all about. Real talk, real conversations about things that matter, that help us to live a full and happy and meaningful life. And one of those key things is relationships. So it's funny how we are not really taught how to have healthy relationships. Some of us may have been lucky enough to have caregivers and people around us that modeled healthy, robust relationships, but most of us have not, right? We tend to have, on a spectrum, anywhere from really traumatic, non functional, and dysfunctional relationships with family of origin, all the way through to not perfect, but very pleasant modeling and interaction. And we all fall along the spectrum somewhere, but there is no 101 that anyone ever tells us about healthy relationships. But turns out there's a lot of research about it. Okay. So that means that it's not random. They don't happen by accident. They happen through intention and nurturing and maintenance. It's also not what the Mills and Boons romantic novels or romance movies tell us, that, you look at someone across a crowded room and the sparks fly, and then it's magnetic and beautiful and magical. Okay. Doesn't happen that way. The initial attraction might, but healthy relationships that mean something and last the distance are there because of intention and certain core elements. And that's what we're going to dive into today. So, the first one, or the first point that I want to make, is that research has shown that there are 5 core pillars to happiness. And one of those is relationships. The other ones are things like positive emotions, how you engage with life. So, kind of like your positive mindset, the growth mindset. It's also about meaning, where you derive meaning and purpose, and also personal accomplishments. So, alongside those 4, relationships are key to happiness. Okay. So, that means that we need to put the time and attention on them, because really, not only do the relationship enhance our life, but our whole well-being is affected by the quality of the relationships that we have. So I want to share with you the 7 pillars so that you can kind of have a little check, a health check of your own relationships. And this is not anything to do with passing relationship, examinations or failing them. What it is about, how are you going, bringing awareness. You're probably doing quite a few of these things. But if not, the great news is that it can be learned. Like anything worthwhile, playing the piano, having a child and raising it, it requires time and attention. But I think you will agree that relationships are worth it. And conversely, if we don't have healthy relationships, if we have draining relationships, if we have negative relationships, if we have toxic relationships, they can really derail our happiness, our health, and our life. So it's super important. So, number one is you must like each other. I know that sounds weird, and I've got some notes here. So if you see me looking away a little bit, but it's funny. A lot of people are in that lust phase and that excitement phase. But then when that wears off, they kind of look around and think, oh, yikes, I don't know if I like you very much. So you can be kind of in love and yet not love the person. So that first one is liking someone. That's why, I guess it's old fashioned, but the dating scene where you actually, and this is a real throwback word, you court someone. So, back in the day, in the, early 1900s up to 1950s or 60s, it was called courting. We call it dating. And that was when you actually went out and did things together and you kind of learned the values of the other person and the likes and preferences and the dislikes. Okay. And then you could sort of see, is this going to mesh up with me? Right. It didn't have to be perfect, but it couldn't be like 180 degrees separate. So you went out and dated. And if that didn't work, you went on to the next person and you dated. Okay. So today it kind of tends to be all these surrogate different ways of doing things that tend to be quite rushed, and people get swept up in the excitement and then they actually don't like each other. So their values are different, their hobbies are different, their social preferences are different. One's an introvert, one's an extrovert. One loves to have people over, the other one hates it. Okay. So a reality check is check the relationships that you have, whether they're intimate partner relationships, family relationships, friends, colleagues. These seven core elements, while the study that I'm going to be quoting is mainly focused on intimate relationships, it applies to all. So let me give you a tip. I'm going to give you the seven signs, and then I'm going to give you a question or a tip to help really consolidate this and to give you some awareness and next steps. So the reality check on this one is just do a little kind of check in your mind as to whether the relationships that you have, regardless of the type, drain you consistently or not. If they drain you consistently, basically underneath it, you don't have anything in common. Okay. It might be through obligation or guilt or just circumstance. So then you have to make some adjustments. Okay. Maybe don't see that person as much, maybe see them in a different setting. And in some cases, if they're very, very draining, you might have to actually let that relationship go. Okay. Communication that works is number two. So it's funny how you hear people say, oh, we've never had a crossword with one another. We don't fight. We get along famously, or whatever it is. Okay. So when I'm talking about communication, I'm not talking about fights in air quotes, as in, getting down and dirty and nasty with people. I mean, you don't need that. But you do want to be able to have disagreements. Healthy relationships have disagreements, okay? But the difference is that they handle them like adults and not like toddlers pitching a fit, in the lolly aisle of the supermarket because you won't buy them, the lolly that they want. So it's not about never having a crossword. It's being able to talk about things that are meaningful to you and not having to sort of like gird your loins in case they backslap you or, have a tantrum or pitch a fit or not talk to you and become passive aggressive. Okay. Those things are signs of emotional immaturity. And sometimes we do them. Okay. But it's just about knowing that you have relationships, whether it's with friends, family, or your intimate partner, where, not maybe not on everything. I mean, nobody's Gandhi or Jesus, but certainly you need to be able to bring things up in a way that's healthy, and it doesn't become personal, and it doesn't become an attack, or somebody doesn't pitch a fit. So here's a tip. Can you tell your partner or your friend or your mum or whoever it is something that's bothering you without them getting defensive immediately, or maybe turning it back on you and blaming you for it, or playing the victim and then feeling sorry for themselves and trying to guilt you into something? So is there manipulation in there? Okay. So have a think about that. And on my blog too, on the website, I've got a whole article that I wrote about, handling difficult conversations. So you can check that out too. If I remember, I'll leave it in the notes. Number 3, real trust. Okay. So this is not just, I trust that they're not going to cheat on me. I mean, that should be a given, right? This is about knowing that they have your back, not just in the good times when you're on a holiday, but when you're struggling with something, whether mentally or emotionally, you're struggling with a family member, or you're struggling with your job, or you're struggling with, a big decision. So real trust is about being able to open up and tell someone something and not have them shove their opinion down your throat or shame you out, or just go, oh, I don't know, and not be interested. So be disinterested, right? So here's a tip for you. So in other words, it's emotional safety. You don't have to worry. You can trust that person. So trust is built over time, and it's not so, it's not like, oh, don't tell anyone, but I'm moving to Venezuela. They're not big things usually. They're small moments that build up that bank of trust. So, for example, did they remember to pick up your prescription from the chemist when you asked them? Did they pick up the milk and the loaf of bread because they were attending to what you were saying? Or did they just forget about it for the 15th time? Okay. Do they support you in front of other people? Or do they kind of subtly, passive aggressively undermine you? And frenemies are good at this, right? You might say something, oh, you got a promotion at work. And they say, oh, it must be nice to have an easy job. So sometimes they're subtle, okay? So do they do seemingly minor behaviors, help you build that foundation of trust? So do they, as I said, pick things up for you? Know that you're really busy at work, so they just try and get home that tad bit earlier to make dinner for you, okay? So that you know that if you admit something or if you share something, they're not going to throw you under the bus when times get hard, okay? So that's real trust. That's number 3. So those questions that I asked, there's some little checks that you can do on your relationships. Number 4, healthy boundaries. I really blame Jerry Maguire. I think it was the movie with Tom Cruise, Jerry Maguire, and where Renee Zellweger was acting as his love interest. And he said, you complete me. I think many, many women around the world gushed, clutched their pearls and thought, oh, if only I could find a man like that. You don't want a man like that, right? The whole notion that you're not really a complete person and you have to have someone in order to complete you is a very dangerous premise and belief. The healthy relationship, it turns out, and the research that I'm quoting from is a variety, but one of the main ones is a research study done over time by Gottman, the Gottman Institute. Okay. And they found that the healthiest relationships and the ones that last the longest are the ones where two people are independent and have their own gifts, strengths, likes, and dislikes, but they have enough commonality to come together as a team. But they're two separate individuals that together, through choice, expand and multiply, right? One doesn't think they need the other to complete them. So, healthy boundaries. Here are some tips, right? So maybe you have a friend that makes a comment that says, since you've gone out with Joe, you've really changed. You're not as happy, you're not as vivacious, you don't go to salsa dancing anymore. You don't come out with us very often. In other words, trusted people around you make comments that you've really kind of been engulfed into the other person's life. And it's more of a negative impact. So it's not like you're overly happy with it, right? And your personality has kind of changed. So it's important to have trusted people around you. Maybe you've seen that in a friend or a family member. Okay. They've gone out or got into a relationship with somebody and they change. Sometimes it's your friends. It depends on how much time you're spending in these relationships. But the test is that someone can tell that you've changed and kind of not for the better. And you feel it too, but it's more of a subtle thing. And you think, well, they're lovely and, oh, yeah, their friends are great and I best get on with their friends and this and that and the other thing. But if you are getting morphed into someone else or you're trying to morph somebody into you and what you like, that's not a great trait. Okay. So that's a little bit of a test, a litmus test. Okay. Are you getting sort of absorbed into someone else's life and all their preferences, or vice versa? It's healthier and far more happier. It's far happier to have two independent, beautiful people coming together by choice and amplifying and expanding. Mutual respect is number 5. Okay. Whoops. So respect means how you speak to one another. It's about how you consider the other person. And this is friendships, family, etc. So it's about understanding that you have your needs and your wants and desires, and so do other people. And it's kind of that beautiful little dance, okay? Not letting all their needs and preferences overwhelm yours, but certainly not demanding that yours are more important than theirs. So it means really at the end of it, not trying to change your partner or your friend or your sister or your brother into you, okay? And respecting their boundaries, their character, their personality. And it's amazing how many people, particularly in romantic relationships, but parents to children as well, and even siblings to siblings, try to change that person into an image of their own self, because they think that the way they do things and the way they live their life is far better than the way the other person is. Okay. And that's not respect, that's control. So here's a bit of a test. How do you both behave, whether it's a friend or a family member, when you disagree on something important? So this happens a lot when people become parents, romantic partners become parents. That's a fundamental evolutionary drive in all of us, if that's what we want to choose, right? And so if you think that your child should be really social and the other thinks no, or if, there's certain rules and regulations for your parents as opposed to their parents, or the kinds of schools they go to or don't go to, okay, or the kinds of extracurricular activities that they do. Pardon me. So how do you both behave? Does one of you, become personal and say, oh, of course you'd say that because your parents are tight asses and that's why you won't do the extracurricular activities? Or how do you behave? Do you listen to understand a conversation that you're having with a friend or a family member? Or do you listen to win? Okay. Healthy couples can disagree respectfully. Okay. And sometimes you do have to say time out. Like if something's a little bit too close to the bone, sometimes you can say, you know what, I'm starting to get really irritated, which is not going to be helpful. So let's just do a little time out and we will, reconvene at a time when we're both feeling a little bit better. Okay, so there's some questions to ask. Number 6, intimacy. Okay, and intimacy can be not just romantic, of course, it can be, that ease, that emotional intimacy that you have with a close sibling or a close friend. Okay. So it's not just the sexual intimacy, it's emotional intimacy as well. So it's kind of like those inside jokes, you have this kind of like a little cheat code with the people closest to you. Sometimes it can be a look, and it sort of compresses any need to have long, drawn out conversations because you have that. It's kind of like a hand in the glove scenario. Okay. And you can have that in any kind of relationship. And it's built on all those other things that we talked about. So, intimacy and ease, where the person sees you, they see your warts, they see your flaws, they see it all. They see the beauty and the beast, and they still love you. Okay, that is true intimacy. So here's some questions. Um, do you feel physically and emotionally safe in your relationships? Okay, so if you find yourself anxious or worried, or there's eggshell moments a lot, again, you need to have a look at that relationship and make some adjustments. And finally, number 7, you're each other's cheerleader. You're not competitors towards each other. Okay. And you'd be surprised how many people in relationships are like this, especially between friends. With this whole social media highlight reel, we only show the fake perfection. People compete to have the most idyllic life, the most rich, the most famous life. Okay. Most of that is not real, by the way. But if you have a healthy relationship, whether it's with a sibling or a friend or your partner, if they get a promotion at work, you're genuinely happy for them and you can see that they deserve it and you say so. The frenemy will say, oh, okay, did anyone else go for that job or was it just you? So it's about competition. It's about kind of backslapping and not being happy for people. If a sibling, uh, you know, gets married or moves to a beautiful house, a healthy sibling relationship is, well done, you. I hope you have many beautiful years here. You guys have worked hard. You deserve it. Not under their breath. Oh, it's only because, I chose not to. That's why, because I'm not after the money or whatever it might be. Okay. So you're cheerleading your people in your relationships. You're not competing. Or conversely, if someone doesn't compete with you, sometimes they can play the victim. Oh, it would be nice. I'd love to have a new house, but my husband Alan doesn't earn enough. Okay, so it's kind of the reverse competition, but it's still manipulation to make you feel bad and they're not happy for you. Okay, so healthy relationships are such that when you have a win, they share in that win and they're genuinely happy for you. So, something you can ask yourself here is, when you share good news with someone, do they respond with enthusiasm and ask questions and get excited? Or do they redirect the conversation to themselves and what win they just had or how victimized they are? If you have relationships like that, then again, you need to make adjustments. Okay. So it's kind of like a little audit, these 7 signs. So just before I finish off, if you haven't subscribed or hit the like bell or the notification bell, that would really be great and help me out. I don't really check out the algorithm. I just kind of put out things that I think are really important and helpful to people. And so I don't spend a lot of time thinking, do I have the right thumbnail? Do I have this? Do I have that? So it really would be helpful to me to keep continuing the channel and the content if you find some value in it, to share one, to comment below, to like and subscribe. Otherwise, YouTube sort of sits it on the shelf and nobody gets to see it. So that would be a simple but very valuable thing that I would be grateful for. So they are the 7, okay? And they're not meant to be a stick to beat people over the head with, to say you're not doing what you should be doing. What it is just bringing awareness. And if we are not doing some of those things, the great news is, now that we're aware of it, we can start to do it. We can start to apply it, and like any other skill, we get better and better at it, and our relationships get deeper, richer, and happier for it. Okay. So the bottom line before I finish is that relationships are not perfect. They're not meant to be. They're meant to be learning, connecting experiences. So it's not about perfection, it's about intention and attention, and putting the time and effort to nurture it, because the payoffs are so worth it to our happiness, our physical health, mental and emotional health, and even how long we live. Research has shown that if you have key relationships that are meaningful, you live longer. So it's a win 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 all the way around. So I hope that these 7 signs helped you, and that the questions and the tips helped as well. Comment below. I don't think many people comment because I'm a baby channel, but I always look at the comments that I get back from the people in my email community, and I'd love to be able to be engaged in conversation with you, because life is better when you're connected. And until then, let's live the rest of our life as the best of our life. Bye for now.